Aloha. Welcome to the podcast this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm excited to bring you Dr. Elizabeth Powell this week. She comes into the studio and we touch on a lot of different things, but I think the main takeaway from this is that we deep dive. She has a lot of passion surrounding identity and how we form it, how we gain it, how we find it. And so we talk a lot about identity. We talk about authentically belonging and how every human really craves that. We talk about celebrating differences in our relationships and with people. And we talk about faith and doubt. So like I said, we're all over the place, but I know you're going to be encouraged by this episode. I absolutely loved this conversation, and I know you will too. So enjoy my chat with Dr. Elizabeth Powell. All right, everyone. I've got Dr. Elizabeth Powell here.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so excited that you're
glad
here.
To be here.
You just did how many 8 hours of sessions with our staff?
Yeah, I think probably about 6 hours of
6?
speaking and then some individual meetings and appointments.
Yeah. So she's nearing the end, but she still agreed to do this podcast because I want everybody to experience you because you came in and for background, everybody, she came in and we're just having our staff, we're just doing health checks, bringing people in, make sure we're like, I don't know how how you say it, like we want to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
We want to be healthy.
Yeah, kind of providing some education maybe for people to be aware of what are some of those signs for burnout. How do you care for yourself in the midst of it?
Yes.
So just some information for them to be tracking.
Yeah. And especially, and you have a heart for church.
I do.
You have a background in therapy.
Yes.
Or education in therapy, but a heart for church.
Yes.
But let's backtrack first.
Okay.
Tell me, we'll get there, but tell me how you grew up, where you grew up.
Yeah.
Where you're from, what brought you into this whole field.
Okay, perfect. I will try.
Okay.
I'm from Orange County, California. So that's where I grew up. That's where I live now. And I guess I've always worked with people. I come from a family where basically, honestly, everyone works in a helping profession.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in the family, if you marry into the family, you're probably going to fall into the category of teacher or therapist or a pastor or some version of that.
Yeah.
So,
and you're literally kind of all of them right now.
Yes. It's really interesting. I sort of did a combination of that. And which is just a testament to where God's taking me. But when I grew up in a family, my dad was a pastor, but he's also a marriage family therapist. So he ended up doing therapy. My mom was a teacher. Early on though, she was a professional opera singer. So very creative person. But I think we just always talked about people. And so I knew I wanted to work with people from an early age. I just did not know what that would look like. And for me, understanding our faith is so central to the work that we do with people, kind of no matter what that field is. And I didn't realize until probably college that for so many people, bringing psychology and Christianity together was very foreign.
Yeah.
They were so separate.
Yeah,
so
very.
Often in the field of psychology, you get this sort of, we don't really want to go to the understanding of faith. Now, people are very open to maybe your own spiritual practice.
Sure, or the universe.
Or like whatever it is that
right.
Mindfulness is big, all of these things. Or higher power, like in recovery movements and stuff. And then in the field or in like Christianity in the church, people just don't have a lot of training in psychology and the skills that can help us. But growing up for me in my household, these discussions were sort of linked. And
it wasn't foreign to you.
It wasn't foreign to me.
Oh, interesting.
And I think I always ask, like, when we study people, how can you study people without studying who created us?
Yeah.
And so those things are so important. But at the same time, I need to study the biology that's part of us.
Yep.
And so that was kind of my background as far as just a really brief summary of family. And then going to a Christian university and studying psychology.
Was that Azusa?
No, that was my grad school.
Oh, that was grad school. Okay.
Yeah. So for undergrad, I went to Vanguard University in Orange County. Okay. And then I went to Azusa Pacific for my doctorate.
Okay.
And for Vanguard, I think it was such a beautiful place of the professors integrating.
Yeah, both.
And I learned really good research skills. I learned neuroscience and just all of those things about cognition. But then it was coming from this place of, how do we understand people from the way that God has made us to be?
Right.
And so I would take religion classes and theology classes and would be so excited to learn too, and then bring that all together and say, what does that tell us about who we are?
Yes.
And so that was an exciting time just in college to kind of say, oh, I can learn more about people. And I got a minor in religion. I really wanted to like do that well.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
So that was kind of that. And I think going into grad school, I actually did not 100% know what I wanted to do. And kind of going into my senior year, I went, I think I'm going to get a doctorate because I will have a lot of flexibility. I feel like God is calling me into that. And strangely enough, it was a PsyD, which is a clinical degree. Okay. So it's kind of applied doctorate. Okay. Taking people into more therapy realms rather than research realms. Yep. And I got into my program at one point and went, I don't really want to do full-time therapy. I like some of it, but that's not what I want to do full-time. And so I didn't know what that would mean. I knew I wanted to do ministry of some sort, but each step along the way, God has just opened up new doors for me. Yeah. So I guess the short version of my background is after I graduated from my doctoral program at Azusa, I got a call from Vanguard again. They're like, can you teach a class now that you have this degree? And I went, I love teaching. Oh, yeah. I love teaching. So I ended up down there and just kind of through some circumstances ended up full-time at the university. And that's where I spent the last like 10, 12 years teaching at the university. And you were associate dean, right? I was, yeah. So I spent
You got tenure?
I did. So I spent a few years as a professor full-time and then was a department chair. And then basically associate dean meant I oversaw our division of social and behavioral sciences. Okay. And so many like good people that I worked with there. I love the students. But this last year, God kind of shifted my focus. And so I stepped away over the summer from that position because I wanted to work with churches primarily. So fall of last year was a hard time for me because I started wrestling through these questions of like, what is God really calling me to do? Yeah. I like what I'm doing. There's great things. Yeah. But I feel like there's something different he has for me. And we could talk a little more. I know this came up of like,
I would love to.
My passion about the churches, but really I just started to see a need for healthy churches. Yeah. And so I leaned into that a little more and felt like God was saying, yeah, now's the time to do some training, seminars, coaching, work with pastors and leaders to create a healthy church. Yes. And so that's what I'm doing now. Kind of out, just like going to different places. So I get to be here in Texas. I was in Nashville last week, and it's really fun.
That's so cool. Yeah. Will you tell a little bit of the story about how, because you told us as a staff, like how God revealed the transition to you? Yes. Because I think that would be helpful for people to know that even like people with, what is it, PsyD? PsyD, yeah. PsyD go through things that they help us with too. You know what I mean? Like, and how you kind of came to the realization of what was happening in you.
Absolutely. So in the fall, I started experiencing more like anxiety and some even kind of depression. I just started to feel like things were harder than they should be. And again, I mentioned like I loved my colleagues. Yeah. And the students. And I kind of thought, what is going on that I'm not feeling like this is the exact place for me? And so it was in that wrestling that I started to go a little bit into a deeper spiritual dive, I would say. And really through that conversation with God went, I think I'm being asked to leave. I think I'm being asked to do something else. And realized that my passion had shifted. It's very similar. Yep. But it had shifted from doing this with students and sending them out to doing this more with churches, with people in ministry. Because of some of the observations I had made about the need for that and just the things that ministry leaders are carrying today. Yeah. But in my own self, it was a hard season. And at first I thought, what is wrong? I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling like work is harder than it should be. And that was not the messaging I was getting from the people around me. Right. I think the people around me, for the most part, I'm absolutely not a perfect person. Yeah. So there were lots of things that they could critique, but many of them were saying, we want you to keep going. We want you to stay in this role, or we want you to even move up in the next few years. And so I could have, but in some of that, working through, and I will say it was a long working through, because I think people, you can hear these stories in sort of a podcast or a show and be like, oh, that took her a week. Right. No. Yeah. It was months. It was for me, an entire fall semester of just feeling this upheaval. And I know for other people it's longer.
Yeah.
Right? Trying to figure it out. But it took several months of me working with my own coach, talking with my friends, talking things through with family to say, I need to do it. And then honestly, even after I thought, this is what I need to do, it took me a couple of months to actually speak that decision to the people I was with. Yeah. Because change is really hard.
Yep.
But coming through that, again, just to speak to this, even after making the decision, knowing it was right, I had several months of sort of this anxiety, like, okay, I'm giving up a steady income.
Right.
Is this really going to work? Is this really what I'm good at? Can I do it? And so there were lots of doubts and questions in that. And for me, the last few weeks have been kind of the most exciting because I'm seeing it come to fruition in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah.
But it was a long season of not feeling great.
Yeah.
So even those of us that work, I mean, working in ministry, there's times where there's like doubt about something, or
you preach faith with doubt in your heart sometimes. Yeah, and that's just how
it is. It's the same with psychological health.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start working with youth and college? Because you specifically really love young people, right?
I do.
What brought that about?
That's a great question. I don't even know how I fully got into it, but I spent a few years when I was in grad school working at a very large church in San Gabriel Valley area. And at that point, I started working with junior hires.
Oh, yeah.
And so I spent several years just on the youth staff. And that's, again, one of my more formative years in ministry, just being with a group of people that I loved. Like the youth staff there were so much fun. So I was doing that on the ministry side, but then on the therapy side, I worked primarily at high schools and then colleges. So I think my just therapeutic experience, my ministry experience ended up being with adolescents and young adults.
Yep.
And my particular passion is identity. And so who else is forming their identity? Yeah. I mean, adolescents and young adults.
Right.
So somewhere in there, I just went, I love this season because they're figuring out who they are.
Yes, yeah.
And exploring identity with people is so much fun. So again, it's probably the hand of God that's put me in the right ministry, that's put me in the right, like we called them practicum, but internships and experiences. And so I just ended up at schools quite a bit. And I think having grown up, I grew up on the college campus, basically. My dad had worked there for a while.
Yeah.
I loved college students.
Yeah.
So that wasn't that foreign to me either. But that's how I kind of gained a passion for youth and for that young adult age.
I love youth too. We were youth pastors back in the day. And
there's no energy like youth ministry, right?
The best years. So much fun. Yeah. And it's like, it is such an honor to get to be a part of somebody's formative years, you know? And like, I always say, like, my kids are young, like 7 and 8, but I'm like, I can't wait for them to be teenagers. People like dread teens, and I'm like, I
love it too.
Wait, right? They're the best. Like, they're the best. And you get this, like, you get to like really have an impact. Yeah. I just always pray it was a good one.
I know.
Right?
Well, I'll tell you one story too. When I was working at a high school, so I was working at this high school that was basically was in this area that was highly gang impacted. Yeah. And the school was a school where people could come back and finish their degree or get a GED. And it was this faith-based school, but people were coming from the local community and we were trying to provide services. So I was doing therapy, but it was teenage boys, right? And I mean, nobody will tell you what they're thinking like teenage boys, because I can remember coming in one time and one of the guys was like, "Did you get a haircut?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I really don't like it." And I was just like, "Thanks." But you know, there's something for me about that group that like knows if you're genuine.
Yeah, big time. They can spot.
Yes.
They can spot it. Yep.
The teenage girls won't tell you where they're thinking in the same way, but like I loved that sort of honesty that they can read the genuineness. Yeah. Those guys are going to tell me where they were at. Yeah. If they didn't like something, if they didn't like me. And I think I was really drawn to that.
So since you've worked with people in that demographic, right? Straight like gangs, and you've worked with church kids. Yeah. What what are the similarities in what you face because a lot of parents listen to this podcast with teenagers. I was just talking to somebody like 3 days ago and they were like, the teens, like I don't literally like just at the end with her teen, And so do you, because there have to be, humans are humans.
Yep.
Humans are going to human.
Yep.
Right? So even from different backgrounds, do you see specific themes in that age group, like coming up that?
Yeah. So when we study like identity formation, I ask people this all the time, like, are teens rebellious or conformists? And people usually want to say rebellious. They're not. They're conformists.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But often it ends up being conforming to their peer group.
The problem is they're not conforming to us. It's their parents. Yes.
But they want to fit in.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that can be countered sometimes by a strong home where people are going to listen to the family and follow. But they're going to be influenced by that peer group pressure at some level.
Yep.
And we've expanded that now because we have social media.
Right.
So that peer group is bigger. And who they're influenced by is bigger, but they want to fit in. That's what's driving them, that sense of belonging. And so I think at home, asking like, how do we create sense of belonging is so important.
Yeah.
So being mindful that when they're coming in, it's not just, here's the rule, you got to follow it, but kind of asking that motivation too. Like, what was it about this decision? Like, how did you get there? In a really, truly curious way.
Yeah.
But all teens, right? They're driven by that sense of belonging. That's right at that stage.
Yep. Right.
And that is about identity formation. They're seeking out, who am I?
Yeah.
But we find out who we are in relationship with people.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because I'm interacting. So something is like reflected back to me.
Yeah.
And often it's the thing that makes us sort of different that's most reflected back to us. For good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of things growing up where people would speak to, oh, you're such a good student, and I could do work fairly easily. That came to me.
Yep.
But so that's a positive label that got internalized.
Right.
But other people get things internalized like you're not doing well in school. Oh, you're not wearing the clothes that everybody else is wearing. Your skin color is different. I mean, there's so many different things that they can get ostracized for. So at home, as much as we can figure out how do we create a sense of belonging and validation and support.
In the home.
Yep. And sometimes I think that is a positive about youth groups, depending on their dynamics sometimes. But that can be such a supportive place to say, oh, I want to be in this community. I want to be part of this community.
Yep.
Because belonging is what they're aiming for.
That's so interesting. I've never thought about it in that sense that I guess it carries all the way into adulthood as well. We want to belong.
We do.
So interesting. I've never really thought about those words, but that's what what we want.
At our core, that's what we all want.
We want to belong somewhere.
Yeah, and I think we actually at our very core want to belong authentically.
Oh,
right?
yes. Oh, you're so right. Yes.
We talk about acceptance, but we want to be seen and accepted.
Totally.
Now, we'll take acceptance for a false self.
We totally will.
And that's what a lot of us do. That's what a lot of teenagers do.
So true.
But that's not what we really want.
Right.
Even those who had been involved in gangs, I would get that question a lot, like, are you scared or are you nervous? And I'm like, not really. I mean, they know me. I like these kids a lot.
Yeah.
But people also would say, like, how can this person make a decision to not be in school and drop out? And I'm like, well, let's look at their perspective for a second.
Yeah.
Because that particular person grew up in an environment where they happened to be in a single parent household. They actually looked at their younger siblings and said, I want to care for them. So I'm going to drop out and make some money so that my younger siblings stay in school. That's not everyone's story, but that's one example.
Yep.
And then I found a group, they spoke to this a lot, like they would find groups where they could belong.
You can lift that up too, yeah. Or does it? Is it?
I don't know. We'll figure it out. But they would find a group to belong in.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of their drive was like, I want to belong in this group and I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice myself in this environment to care for the people around me. And so once I started to understand motivation, it helped me have empathy for choices that people had made. And I saw that even so clearly with teenagers.
Yeah.
Belonging and actually their care for others drove them.
That's so like, and you taking it even farther with, we want to be seen and belong authentically. And I think that's something like my whole life I've like felt like and I've told my husband this many times, but I've constantly had to work through that because I can morph easily. It's very easy for me to be a chameleon. And if I'm in this room, I can be that way. And in some ways it's what makes me good socially. And in some ways it's what like kills my insides because who am I?
Yeah.
Am I this person? Am I like a goofy like ditz over here? Or am I the super smart person over here? Or am I the, and it's like in some ways, I think you were talking about it with us too this week, but like the things that make us great, the personality add-on can be great, but also recognizing like, how does somebody like me, I love that we're like going all over the place here, but these are such human things, like whether it's teens or adults, like how does somebody because some people just are who they are and they can just be who they are and they have no problem with being that way. Other people really want to be liked, accepted, seen. And then sometimes I think that desire can override the real authentic parts of us.
It does,
And sometimes we don't even know the real authentic parts of us. And it took me a long time to figure out who I really am because I was just always kind of morphing. And so how does one start that journey?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a big question.
And I do want to emphasize that I think it is a journey. I think I could sit here today and say, I know myself fairly well.
Yeah.
And yet probably in 10 years, I'm going to look back and be like, there were lots of things I didn't know about myself.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of how God's made us is so complex and interesting. But we do have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so some of that is a matter of just intentionality. Like I'm going to sit with myself and notice, what am I feeling today? What am I thinking? Where did that reaction come from?
Yeah.
I have that people pleasing side. So I definitely go into situations and think, oh, I want to make sure I'm liked. I want to make sure that these people engage with me. And so I can change a little bit too. But then I started to notice my own feelings coming out of some of that going, I felt lonely in that situation, or I felt missed in that situation.
Yeah.
So it's spending that time kind of sitting with ourselves and evaluating honestly, what did I actually feel today?
Yeah.
What is my body telling me today about my experience?
Yeah.
And so that starts giving us clues. And then I think we move into relationship too. We do need people to reflect things back to us.
Yeah.
And say, well, this is actually how I'm experiencing you. This is what I see in you.
Yep.
And so to me, it's just this intentionality of sitting with it, looking at it, engaging with others, asking for feedback and dialoguing, and not just reacting to the world.
Yeah.
But at our core, we also then, I think, intentionally have to lean into understanding who we are in God. Because
back to identity and back to
that's going to give me the security I need in those future situations to also say, I don't have to please everybody here.
Yeah.
I don't have to. I can be myself and know that it's okay because this is who God made me. But that, again, that's a big process, really.
Yep.
So the small starting block is just to intentionally sit and say, what am I feeling today?
Yeah.
What am I thinking today? Was that me? Was that a reaction to someone else?
Is a part of that like learning to like ourselves? Is there an aspect of that in there? Like,
I think so.
Because some people just don't like who they are. We run into this a lot, like with ministry. They just so, whether it's shame or guilt or I wish I had a different personality or I wish I was. Is that a component or not really?
I think so. But part of that question for me sometimes is, do you not like who you are or do you not like what you've done?
Yeah.
And those are different things.
That's great. That's a great distinction.
Because there are lots of things that I don't like that I've done.
Yep.
And that is part of me. And that's part of my story. But I have to be careful that it's not the totality of me.
That's great.
So we can look back at that and say, I didn't like those choices I made.
Yep.
Okay, I can make different choices now.
Right. And
God's grace is in that too.
Totally.
So some of that, the first question I would want to ask is just, is it what you've done or is it who you are? Those personality things too, we have them at our core.
Yep.
So some of that question is, why do we not like them?
Yeah.
Do I not like being an introvert? I'm an introvert because that's kind of what the expectation of society is. Mm-hmm. I think extroverts are more celebrated. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is it what I'm looking at as an expectation or a comparison? I mean, we've been doing these seminars with my dad, who's very extroverted. And so I think there was a time when I would look at that and go, I need to be like him.
Yep.
And I didn't like myself, not because I didn't actually like myself, but because I was comparing to him. I was comparing to these expectations of society. Yep. And what is even such a positive is so many people would come to me and say like, your dad's really cool. He's so crazy. He's helped me in this way. Yeah. And that was actually really awesome. But part of my framework as I was especially a high schooler or college student would be like, but I'm not that. Yeah. Does that mean they're not going to like me? I'm different. Yeah. And so
because he was so celebrated. I grew up with a mom like this too. She was the queen of town. I mean, just amazing. The most amazing woman. Like jumps into oceans to save people and loves everybody's at everybody's birthing beds, everybody's deathbeds. Amazing. But so I'm relating with this though, because it's like, so I have to have that personality. Right. Because she's so celebrated. Yes. When really I'm just like my dad. Yes. That's so.
And it's like an internalization that's false.
Yeah.
Because we can be different.
Totally.
And be celebrated.
Yeah.
And I don't know why in my head, right, I hear, oh, I love him. And you're different, therefore I don't like you.
Right. Right. And people really aren't like that.
No. Yeah. But that's what I heard. So I think that question of like.
That's a really good thing to think about.
I wonder, do we really not like ourselves? Or are we getting messages?
Yeah.
That we shouldn't because we're different or that's not the expectation of society.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we really sat with ourselves, we could start to see, oh, this is the good of my personality. Yeah. This is who I am. I'm going to embrace that.
Yeah. That's so good. There's been multiple times where like we'll be at a party or a wedding or, something. And Dustin will be like, you can just sit down.
Yeah.
You can just sit because he knows I love people to death, but I am drained socially. Like I just am. I don't sound like I am, but I just am. Like I will just go home from Sundays and I'll be taking jewelry off in the car. I'm in my sweats in 2 seconds and I'm like flat on the couch right after.
Well, it totally makes sense. Even this summer, I did a 2-week trip to Greece with friends.
That's so fun.
And we were in Athens for a few days and we got to go like.
I just got back from Athens.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It was so hot when we were there. Yes, it's beautiful. And then we actually rented a sailboat and went between islands, which was cool. But the whole point of it is these are like these other ladies who are similar in age to me and we like, always have a great time together. But they're so much more of like night people than I am.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a morning person. Yeah. I love the morning.
Yeah.
So once or twice we'd get back and it would have been a long day for me. Yep. And I'm like, I'm done. And they're like, there's this great food place up the street. It's 9 o'clock because in Europe.
Oh, yeah. Dinner starts at 9. Yep.
And so once in a while, I just had to be okay with my own self to say, I'm actually going to lay in bed now.
Yep.
I'm so excited that you can go have dinner.
Yeah.
And do your thing. And then I may get up early and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Because it's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But it felt like missing out at first. And then eventually I went, I did do a night where I was like, I'm really tired, but I want to be with them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go.
Yeah, you push through it.
But there's kind of a mix there where sometimes I just embrace my own self and realize it's okay to go to bed early.
Yeah.
Or other days like I want to be with my friends. So it was my choice, my motivation to be with them, not this force going out.
It's like one of my girlfriends always says, like, I want to be invited to I don't want to go to any of the parties, but if I'm not invited, I'm devastated, right?
Exactly. But I think that's like
I don't want to know I'm wanted, but
we all want to embrace who we are.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's just it's the group around us has a different expectation, the society has a different expectation. And I know we all feel like we can miss out.
Yeah.
But I actually sat in that bed and thought, I love this.
This is great. Right.
Yes. I'm enjoying being home.
Right.
We can be different. And I think in the past years, I would have had a hard time saying no.
Yep.
But I would have gone and been miserable that night.
Yep.
Well, what fun is that?
Right.
So it's a learning process over time to say, like, I want people to know me. and be okay with that.
Yes.
I want to know them, be okay with that.
Yes.
And figure out how to just
Right.
be okay.
And that's real intimacy, be known for who you really are.
Yeah.
And so, especially in church world, you see this, I'm sure, best foot forward.
Yep.
Even in therapy, sometimes I feel like,
It's
you
true.
know, like I really want to make him happy,
Yeah.
right? Like I want him to be proud of
Yeah.
me. But it's like, that's the one place where you should be the most of a mess, right? Like, like you guys were saying, like church should be like it's a rehab center. It's not a place for like perfection, but yet we feel so much pressure to, one of my girlfriends had me over for a dinner this last week, and I went over there and she like comes out in her sweatsuit. She was like, I didn't clean my house. She's having her daughter's getting married. And so she had all of her wedding stuff over in the dining room everywhere. And I walked in and I told her, I was like, this is literally my love language because you trust me to not feel like you have to like put jeans on, which jeans are the worst. Put jeans on or have a perfect house. And to me, that felt like, oh, we're close now.
Yep.
Like we have a real thing because I'm getting to see her real life.
Yes.
And I want people to see mine, but it takes a while to get to that place.
And I think that's so cool to think about it as like an invitation into the messy spaces.
Yeah.
We're not going to show everybody that.
Right.
And that's totally appropriate.
Yep.
But that intimacy is learning to see the messy space and to see behind the curtain.
Yep.
But going back to your point a second ago, I think is so interesting. I've pondered for a long time, like, why are churches the place that we feel like we have to have it all together? Yeah. And we do. Yep. And I think people in ministry feel that way. Mm-hmm. Often people attending the church feel that way. But that's not reality, right? It's the culture that we've somehow set up that says, in order to be in this place, I need to have everything worked out. And I just think, no, actually it's such the opposite message of what Jesus is saying. Like, I have come for you in your mess. Yep. Just come to me. Mm-hmm. And now I think in relationship with him, we become healthier. We become more like him. Yep. But there's no expectation of a starting place. Right. Right. And even along the way, we're going to have mess ups. We're human. Yep. But that's such a great question. Like, I don't know how we got to this dynamic. Yeah. But it does exist.
It does. And you always want to like break it down. And it's like hard to even know where to begin with that, because people also don't want their pastors getting up and being like, welp, here's all my crap. You're right. you know? But at the same time, like, you also want to relate. It doesn't help anybody to be on a stage and be perfect.
Some of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of days here too is there are maybe times and places to share. Yep. And I think as leaders, the deep struggle you're maybe in the middle of doesn't need to be out for everybody, but does need to be shared with safe people. Yep. Because I think our leaders still need to be sharing and working through.
Absolutely. Well, you're the chair of
the board.
What is chair of the board of your church? Yeah. And what were you saying that you guys require?
Well, we've talked a lot about like, okay, we want therapy. Yep. We want our pastor to maybe go to therapy. Yep. And it's not a huge requirement, but it's like, we want you to check in a couple times. Yeah. Just to make sure things are going well. And we want just to have kind of a balance so that there's somewhere outside
safe
of
place
the church.
For him, right. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things I've been realizing in doing consultations with people in ministry too. They don't know where to go. Because they can't share with the other people in the church every detail, and nor should they. But you got to find like a counselor outside of the church system, or you got to find a pastoral leadership team that you meet with. Yep. Because there has to be a level of sharing. And so that's part of it with when we think about that for the pastor. Yeah. We want to support him in a way to say, no, we're just going to say, we want you to do this. We're encouraging you to do it because we want to make sure you're healthy. Yeah. And we're not doing it because of any actual concern, right?
Totally. Yeah.
We're saying, we just want to take care of you.
Yes. It's so nice.
Yeah. Like, so nice. Do it because that's important. Because I also see pastors carry so much right now. Yeah. I mean, you can't please everybody. Yeah, it's brutal. Really hard. And there's more and more being asked of people leading. Yeah. I think there's more disruption in society right now and disagreement. And so do you say something? Do you not say something? Do you take a stand on this issue or that issue? I mean, the pressure is so great. Yeah. So that is something I think is really important is, find a counselor, find a pastor, somebody to confide in that can help you.
Yeah. So good. So the college students just are leaving or deconstructing or whatever you want to call it, the faith that it feels like a pretty high rate.
I think so.
I don't know the statistics, but it feels just like it's a really hard time to have faith and live in the world and and belong. I would be curious as to your perspective on that.
It is. I think part of the reason
what we can do better as a church, and as people of faith.
Part of the reason I wanted to go into this field is because, like, working with churches, I want to have healthy churches.
Yep.
Because I saw students leaving, I saw young adults leaving.
Yep.
And there's a couple of reasons. One is this whole perfectionistic thing that we're talking about. Unfortunately, leaders carry this. So when there is an issue that comes up, when there's something that they're dealing with, they just kind of stuff it down. And that's where we see all these, unfortunately, like falls, whatever term we want to use, but these situations where it's like inappropriate behavior. Moral failure, And that's really weighs on them. Yeah. It weighs on the college students. Well, young adults, anybody. I mean, older adults can do this too, can see it. But I think there's been a number of big versions of that. And so they've seen this happen with several churches, that people that they really looked up to, people that they thought were sort of these model leaders, watching them struggle, kind of sent into a spiral. So part of my hope was like, hey, let's work with church leaders and help them to think about their own health.
Yes.
So many of them I don't think are bad people. Now, I understand that there's certain things that happen that are pretty scary.
Not cool. Yeah.
But I think power is difficult.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting help, if you're not working with a team around you that's going to tell you what's really happening, if you're not getting feedback, that's going to take anybody down a really bad path. Yeah. But that's what I think they've seen. So the perfectionism, but also the absolutism. So we have these like polar, like opposite sides, and everything's very extreme. And so many of the young adults are having a hard time reconciling the generation before, saying it's all this or nothing. And they look at something and they go, I have a question. I have a question about this theological belief. And I've had so many people come into therapy and say, as a teenager, I was in my youth group and I said, I don't understand why we believe this. And they go, you just got to believe it.
Yeah.
And almost shamed in front of people. And that really led them to say, I don't know if that's the God I want to follow. And so I think there's just better ways to engage with questions. We don't always have to agree with the position that the young adult is saying. But how can we say that makes sense that you're asking that?
Yeah.
I want to talk you through it. Let's figure it out together. Sometimes, that doubt leads us to a deeper engagement.
A wonderful place.
A wonderful place.
Right.
One of the things that we're talking about at my church right now, it's actually a Faith and Doubt series. So this is not for me at all, but it's other people have been speaking on it. And, it's really cool because we've talked about how it's really doubt helps us separate too. What is really God and what is culture?
Yeah.
What is it that's just my own fear? Like, what do I need to know? I'm going to ask these questions and lean into it and trust that the Spirit's going to tell me in this process.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to be afraid of questions. But there has been a generation before that sort of shut that down, said that means you're not following God anymore. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
My dissertation was in faith development. Oh, cool. So I studied college students. There is a place where they have to ask a question for it to become their own.
Oh, that's good. There's a place they have to be able to ask a question for it to become their own. Okay, yeah.
We don't have ownership if we don't ask the question.
Yeah.
It's my parents' faith. Yeah. It's my church's faith.
Right.
So when young adults, high schoolers are asking question, I think we need to embrace that, to say, oh, that's so cool because they're taking it on as their own. Yeah. They're starting to make this their faith. I can dialogue, I can engage.
Yes.
But those two things, the perfectionism that sort of led to the fall of many of our pastors and leaders, and then this all or nothing.
Yep.
Like, you do one thing that I disagree with as a parent or a church member and you're out of the church.
Yeah.
That is really sending them spinning. There we go. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
It's like spinning. But it sends people into these questions and then sends them away. And we're in the middle of very complex cultural issues that people are asking about. Yeah. I mean, without getting into the depth of all of it right now, but questions around sexuality and gender and I'm trying to think of some of our other big ones, right? But like all of those kinds of things, those can be complex. And if we come too black or white with somebody, they may go, okay, well, I'm out then.
Yeah.
Versus at least hearing and engaging and dialoguing.
Yeah. It's so good. I'm always a big fan of thinkers. You know, I love a good, solid thinker, even if they cause me all kinds of trouble, right? With questions, I love it because I'm like, oh, this is good. When you're at the end of this question train or whatever, when you're at the end of this, you're going to own this thing,
right?
Like you're going to know what you really, and it's so like, wouldn't we rather have that and a little bit of mess in the middle and be challenged as leaders who are farther down the path? And it's like, I think it can be scary.
It is scary
for adult leaders to have a generation being like, what?
Well,
why?
Let me go back to the dissertation. And it was kind of a smaller dissertation study. So for the academics out there. But what I found is that the deeper questions generally did not lead people away.
Yeah.
Or the hard questions when they were in an environment, again, where authentic belonging occurred. So when they felt like their self was accepted and part of it, they usually stayed.
Yep.
And they wanted that relationship with Christ, and they still wanted to stay in the community. Now, their eventual faith may look slightly different than the parent or the senior pastor or whatever. Yep. But they didn't just go bolt. They didn't just get out of there. Yeah. And I think that's our fear. But
we're very scared of that.
We're scared of that.
Very.
But it's the opposite.
Yeah, it does the opposite.
So when we shut it down and say, well, we don't ask that question, we don't do those things, you either have people still continuing on, but it's not authentic.
Faking,
or they're out.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to. I think we have to go back to like, what does it mean to authentically belong again? And I understand we're not looking at, there are certain guidelines for behavior. There are certain things that we're going to have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can we tolerate just some of the ambiguity, the questions, the uncertainty? I really do think that's what the next generation wants.
Yeah. I was thinking a while ago, like I've had it out with God so many times over so many things. And I was realizing like that just makes it so real. I have it out with my husband every other day, right? Not really, but at least once a week we have a good talk, you know? It's like that makes it real.
It does.
Like it's authentic. It might not look perfect all of the time and it might not be bathed in scripture. There might be some tears and some whining and complaining, but it's real.
It's real.
It's real.
It's what Jesus modeled for us.
Right.
I think about all the time of like, okay, he was here, he had 33 years.
Yeah.
That all were leading to the cross.
Yep.
I don't think that was a surprise.
Yeah, for sure. You're right.
And yet right before, he's in a garden asking, do I still have to do this?
Yeah. Yep.
And sweating this like blood drop and all these things. And so, some people look at me and they go, oh, you're saying Jesus was anxious? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if he was. I don't know exactly what he was feeling, but he had true emotion.
Yeah.
And he still went to his father to say, is there any other way?
Right.
Now he did it in the end.
He did it. Yeah.
But it was, I think, through that honest, authentic wrestling, that relationship builds and occurs.
Yep.
And so maybe even some of that was a model for us more than what he needed. But if he can do that, why can't I take my human doubt and say, I don't really get it, God, but I want to keep leaning into it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know you. I don't always understand. And just, like you said, like, today I'm angry. I really don't like what's happening. I mean, I've had so many people with that question that say, why did this happen to me?
Yep.
I don't always know.
Yep.
But why not say to God, like, I feel like you've left me.
Yeah.
But I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm showing up.
Yeah.
So it's scriptural to me to ask the question, to be honest.
Yeah.
To engage with God.
Yeah. That's so good. Sometimes I don't know, you would know if it's a personality thing. Is it like what makes somebody more questiony and critically or critical thinkery.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. And then some people are just really satisfied with just no worries, no doubts. It's all true and it's settled. And that both are beautiful, I'm sure, in their own way. But like, I think my husband definitely has had his own wrestling, but I really wrestle like cerebrally. I wouldn't say really, but I have in the past. I'm more in my head. I'm thinking things through. I'm like, what this? Why this? Where does this? What is this in scripture? I'm always, whereas for him, he's like, gospel's gospel. We're called to do God's work. We're building the kingdom. He's with us. Let's go. Who's got time to think about all that? And I'm like,
I don't know. To me, some of that's personality.
Yeah, do you think? Yeah.
I do. I think it's personality, our own history too. But that's the beauty of different personalities is maybe we need a little bit of both.
Yeah.
We need the person who's going to say like, I'm sure and I want to keep us moving and let's go forward.
Yes.
And then the person who's also going to ask some of the questions. Say, well, hey, we've been doing that for 30 years. Is that still the thing we need to do?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a different format for that. Maybe there's a different way because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it's the beauty of being ourselves, whatever that is.
Yep.
That's that whole picture in scripture of the body. Like, we are different parts.
Yep. Yeah.
We need different parts. Some of us need to have the function of the eye, the ear, the foot.
Yep.
Personalities for me are like that.
Yeah.
They're just like, what are we bringing to the table? And so, of course, we're going to have the people who stay steady in this, the others that kind of mix it up.
Yep. Yeah.
But what you're saying is we have to be cautious then of not judging the other one as inferior.
Totally.
Because it's different than our way
then
of
it's
doing
us.
It.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is so funny because earlier we started with like, we're comparing ourselves again to other people and thinking we're inferior. And then at times we do the other.
We think everyone else is.
But that's back to the whole thing of just like, we've got to stop with the full comparison.
Yes.
And just say like, who am I? What's my accountability to God? Who are you?
Yep.
What do you bring? How can I celebrate and hear your story?
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of who we are as a body of Christ. And that's why I love congregations where you have different stories and different histories, different cultures.
Yep.
Because I start to think about things in a new way and even learn more about who God is.
Yep.
Because of what I see through somebody else.
Totally.
And that's beautiful.
Yes. There's nothing like getting around the world. I was just in Greece too. You were. And I'd never been before. And the people there are like people I've never met anywhere. Like a twinkle in their eye.
Love it.
So fun. It's always sarcastic. And I love sarcasm. Always a little like sassy with you. And like even the waiters would be like funny. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is such, it was like just even traveling physically somewhere, I saw a different part of like God and in humanity.
Yeah.
And it was so fun.
I love that because sometimes we go and we judge, even if we're going like with a church thing, group, mission, whatever, but we look at something else and go, oh, they're not doing it the way that that we do
because America's got it all figured out.
Yeah. Or my particular church has it all figured out. Or any of that.
Right.
But and it's like, okay, wait a minute. This is like another beautiful expression. Even denominations sometimes are like that for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I come from a Pentecostal background. I like that. But there's something beautiful in the liturgy.
100%.
There's something beautiful in another style. That still reminds me of a different aspect of God. Yeah,
that's so good.
And I can learn from that.
It's so good. Let me check the time because I know Hannah has you and I want to give you a rest before you go into your next minute. Okay. One other thing for somebody talking about identity, because that is just so encompassing. Like for somebody who's listening and they're like, identity sounds great. Knowing who I am sounds great. Sitting with myself, being comfortable with myself, being my authentic, that sounds great. I don't even know what does even sitting with myself mean? You know, where would you start maybe in coaching or therapy? Where would you start somebody on the process of like really discovering who I am, what I have to offer the world, you know, like just from somebody who's just been beat down by life, beat down by the past, beat down by
I think there are just a few basic questions to start with.
Okay, great.
And sometimes they feel a little self-serving or something when we first start, but it's like, what brings you joy?
Great. Yeah.
And if you don't know, then go try some stuff out.
Yeah.
We live not far from the ocean. And so sometimes we'll even tell people like, go dip your toes in the water. Was that fun?
Or did you hate it?
Did you hate it?
Right. Right.
So like what brings you joy?
This is great. And that points to something in them, you're saying.
That points to something to say like, who are you? That sparks something
in
you.
Oh, this is
great. That's going to tell me about your personality.
Yeah.
That's going to tell me about your passion. That's going to tell me about your calling, right?
Yeah.
What brings you joy? And there are people that would say, it's my family. It's my kids.
Yeah.
Now, they might be overwhelmed at times because got, 3 kids under 5 running around and it's stressful. But really sitting with it, they're like, no, but they bring me joy. Right. Okay, great. What does that mean to be a mother, a father?
Yeah.
Let's lean into that.
Yeah.
There's something in your identity.
That's great.
There.
I like you starting from joy.
Yeah.
That's like really sweet.
It is. Well,
I like that.
What brings
so
you
happy.
joy? What
yeah.
energizes you?
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yep. Okay.
So this is where we got at personality stuff before.
Yes.
Well, what energizes me? I love speaking. At the same time, people de-energize me at the end of the day.
Right.
So rest energizes me.
Yeah.
So it's a combo. I need both. So there's the extrovert might be like, it's always people.
Yep.
But I think there's the combo. What brings you joy? What energizes you?
Mm-hmm.
And again, those feel sometimes self-serving for us as Christians. I think we've got to be giving to everybody all day long.
Right.
But we can't do that if we don't take care of ourselves.
Totally.
So those are like a couple simple questions to start with. Like what actually makes me feel excited?
Yeah. That's amazing because when you think of identity, it's like, work it out, do the work.
Yeah.
Deal with the traumas, get over it. But I love that you're just like, what makes you happy, girl?
Yeah. It is. And
that's a good place to start.
There's a combo of like, what makes me happy sometimes can be play, and we need that. But then I think that leads into deeper passions.
It does, yeah.
One of my things I love is going to tea.
Oh, fun.
Like, what? Tea? I love afternoon tea.
Yep.
But there's something for me, I don't like coffee, I like tea. but there's something about the process that's also, it's because I sit with another person. And it's slow. And there's a rhythm to it. And I get to hear what they say. So it's not just the tea.
Right.
But the fun of the afternoon tea has a lot for me that's like, I get to sit with you. And then there's a system to it.
Yeah.
And so it's told me things about myself of like, I like the conversation. I like the listening. I like getting dressed up and going. And I like the process of that. So once we figure out what actually gives us joy, once we figure out what kind of energizes us, I think then we can go to some of those other layers to say, what's the deeper meaning in that?
Right.
But sometimes it's also just fun.
Yeah. That's so good. So with identity, because I know like you guys have been talking to us a lot too, like there are add-ons and traumas that come, earlier. And then we get to this place where it's like, is this me or is this what happened to me? Do I really hate people or am I just protecting? Am I, all of these different things. So how can you give a quick synopsis before we end on just like how to kind of differentiate between like things that have happened and different add-ons that we can pull in that might not be us. It could just be an add-on. Yeah,
I think some of it comes down to like what's our motivation for something.
Okay.
So it is part of me, some of my protections, but it's not my core personality. It's maybe not the way I was fully created, but I'm protecting against a hurt or a pain from the past in my history. So it's like me, but not me at the same time.
Yeah.
So part of it is asking ourselves like, what is motivating us? And that's kind of why I start with joy.
Yeah.
And I start with those things like that's probably getting at my true essence.
Right.
But the fear, the anxiety, what do I do in response to that? That's usually those like intensifiers, those add-ons, those things I've learned from my family. So when it comes to identity, I think we can sort of ask ourselves like, is there a past experience or a moment that's driving this? Is there something I'm thinking about from the past in my history that's driving my response right now? Is there a protection? Am I doing this because I'm worried about what others are going to do to me?
Yeah.
What's going to happen in this situation? So we're starting to look at the motivation for behavior.
Yeah.
Or is this really bringing me life?
Yeah.
Is this something that's creating energy and excitement? Is it bringing me closer to God? So it's a little bit hard to get at some of that, but we start to ask like, why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
That's what my mom taught me. Oh, okay. Do you agree with that? Does it bring you joy or no? So as we look at our life history, as we look at sort of our traumas, as we look at our story, the protections, we sort of ask, what's the motivation for these things? And I think we also have to be careful not to say that they're bad.
Yeah.
They usually are pretty functional for a season. I had a protection for a reason.
Yeah.
But is that still the thing now?
There, right. I like that.
Yeah, and I would just say one thing too I wanted to add is we don't have to be the same in every space. Mm-hmm. Like you were talking about this at the beginning. Oh, am I just like chameleon? What is it? Even some of our protections or our personality, like I am a reliable person. Mm-hmm. So therefore I can't fall apart. Okay, can I be the reliable person at work because that's what I need to do?
Right.
But go home and have a space to fall apart. Uh-huh. Can I go to my therapy office and fall apart? So sometimes we internalize as part of our identity, like I'm reliable, therefore in every situation.
I can't.
I have to be. I can't fall apart. I can't show emotion. So our identity is semi-flexible. You can be reliable and still have a moment where you fall down, where you let somebody down. Yeah. I'm a smart person who occasionally does dumb things.
Yeah.
So like just because we have an identity too doesn't mean there's not a time that we don't fit with our identity.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah. So giving ourselves a little bit of flexibility to say, oh, this is part of who I am. It's maybe not the totality of who I am. And then looking at the motivation, like, why am I doing it? Is it the core or is it a protection? Yeah. Is this something I learned? I think helps us differentiate. Is this really like these add-ons that have come from my history or is this who I am? Right. And that's a hard process. It's a murky process.
Yeah. And you really need somebody to help walk you through that most of the time, right?
I think so. I think it helps a lot.
Some feedback with somebody bound by law.
Yeah. I think
to keep your secrets.
No, that's the whole point. And you have lots of options. You can do therapy.
Yep.
I think that's a great one. I'm always going to advocate for it. But I think we have good friends. Yeah. We have spouses. We have, people that walk alongside us that can sometimes help us in that process too. Mentors. Yep. However somebody wants to get started. Yeah. When you think about friendships, do we become friends just because we like all the same things? Well, sure. But what's a deep friendship? Yeah. When you've shared your mess. Yep. When you've gone deep, when they can call you out on stuff. So that's actually when we feel bonded to people. Yeah. So we do need relationships to help us sort through our identity. Yeah. I'm not sure identity happens in isolation.
Yeah. No, that's really good. It doesn't happen in isolation.
I don't think so.
Because we wish it did.
Yeah.
We'd love to get all fixed up and then have relationships and be like perfect. But that's just, it's formed in relationship. Yeah. That's really, really good. Yeah. It's like the people are like, it's just me and Jesus. It's just me and Jesus. I'm like, I wish. I wish it was just me and Jesus. Nope. He gave me like 1,000 other people to be in this thing with. Right. But that's how he designed it.
I think so. I think that's how we grow. That's how we evolve and change. But also maybe how we grow closer to him is being sharpened by other people.
Yeah. That's so good. Do you have any like resources that you love that you would like point people to in the sense of like just like doing just groundwork on who am I? How do I authentically be me? Connect with people along those lines. Is there any like books or...
Yeah, I always
besides your phone number.
I love so many different books, and then like when I get asked, I'm always like, "Oh, which one is the best one?"
I can
this
edit
situation?
The pauses. So you can Google if you want.
Because it kind of depends on where somebody's at with what they explore. One of my personal favorites. I mean, I just adore anything by Henry Nouwen.
I love Henry Nouwen.
Yeah, and I often am like, Life of the Beloved is such a cool place to start. It's not necessarily that you're finding your own identity, but it gives, I think, people permission to recognize that at our core, we're the beloved, and there's all these other things that are out there.
That. I haven't read that one of his.
Yeah, I like that one.
I have a big one my dad just sent me of like 4 of his books. Okay. It might be in there. So if it is, I'll
it's not even that long if people want to read
Life
it.
of the Beloved. Okay. That's great.
But it's basically that we are his beloved, right? So it's identity formation in that. But it's again, like brokenness is one of the chapters. And so there's this sense of like, we're broken. Yeah. We're human. And yet at my core, I'm the beloved. So, okay, what does all this mean? Yep. I'm fine.
Yeah.
because I am still God's beloved.
Yeah.
No matter what. And he has this phrase in there that's like, we both are and are becoming.
Yeah.
And I love that. We already are the beloved, but we're becoming the beloved.
It's like in theology, not yet. What is it? Always.
No, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Always, not yet, or what? No, now I have to remember this. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Always now, not yet.
Something like that. But it's like the sanctification and justification all working together. It's like, so
exactly.
What was it again? We are
both the beloved and are becoming the beloved.
Okay.
And I think it's exactly right. It's like in theology terms, it's
already not yet. That was it.
Already
not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have like sanctification and justification, but not everybody needs to know that exact phrasing per se.
Right.
But it's like we are his beloved, but we're also becoming.
Yeah.
And we're in process. So I love anything by him.
That's so good.
I'm trying to think of what else. For people who are more in the later of like trying to separate sometimes from family and figure out the right boundary. I mean, Cloud and Townsend have boundaries books.
Yep.
That's great. I'm trying to think of like a good identity book, but Henry Nouwen's usually my like
Life of the Beloved.
Go-to.
I'm going to read that one next.
I'm sure I'll come up with more after we finish and be like, oh yeah, all these great books that we're looking at.
That's great. Did he write The Prodigal too?
Yeah,
I love The Prodigal.
And Wounded Healer.
Yes. I don't know if I've read that one. He has so many.
So many. I just think he's such a great place of deep faith and yet, oh look, we're broken and there's doubt and there's challenge.
Yeah.
But Ragamuffin Gospel is a pretty good one too.
Yep.
Because no book is going to be like, here's your personality.
Totally.
Right? It's more like, how do we feel okay to search out who we are?
Yep. That's great. Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been so good. I just hope it really helps people. Even just hearing like, we're broken. We're human. It's okay. What were y'all saying this in these sessions? I loved it. Instead of confessing sins,
confessing
humanity. And it just changes the perspective from like shame.
Right.
Which is, I am bad. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, you are.
I am bad. It's like my third or fourth time. But guilt is, I just did something bad, but I'm not bad. And I love that. And it's like confessing sin can feel so like, oh, this is the end. Oh, I'm going to, and it's like human, we're messy, we're broken. We confess it.
Yeah, it's still confession.
It's still confession, 100%. It just doesn't mean it's the end of the world for us. And for some people, it's like end of the world.
Yeah, and if I missed that one thing I did wrong over there, then I didn't get full forgiveness.
Totally,
it's like,
how many more Hail Marys?
We're just going to like, God wants to know us and wants us to bring our stuff to him and be with him.
So
grace is there in that.
Yes.
And so he wants intimacy, right?
So good. Above anything else,
right? Above anything else, I think.
And intimacy is messy and authentic.
And he gives us a choice, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. I wish he didn't.
I know. In some ways, it'd be so much easier.
Like, I was like, why couldn't you just make me a robot? I didn't want the choice. The choice. But it's so beautiful.
It is.
And it means that we have something so real.
And we get to be ourselves in it and connect to him authentically. So again, if I could leave, people with that thought for the communities they're in is like, how do we create authentic belonging? How do we sort of create that space? It's not easy, but it might start with us being authentic and caring for people. Again, doesn't mean we have to agree with everything, but that's what this generation is looking for.
Yeah, authentic belonging. I love that. I'm going to name this episode that.
Yeah,
so
do
good.
It.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Come back. I hope you guys come back.
I think we probably will.
Now you've what is it like when you just like pull the thread out of them and then it's like
there's so much more to untangle.
Get him back.
I know. Hopefully it wasn't total deconstruction without reconstruction.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. And we just need it. We have to be healthy as churches. And I just love that. I haven't really heard anybody else be that. Like, this is what I'm passionate about is healthy churches. Like, and what do we need more of right now than that? I mean.
Yeah. That's, I think that's for many people who are not in the church.
Yeah.
That's their biggest hang up is sort of this idea that we're saying we're perfect and then we're not.
Yep.
And I would rather us say we're aiming for health.
Yes.
Which includes working on difficult things.
That's so good.
That
is so. What did you say about health at the beginning? It was so good. I know. That was like 10 hours ago.
I know. I'm like, which thing? I don't know. Yeah.
How health is
the recovery.
I can't remember. It was like in the very beginning when you were defining words. How we put words to things, and how we define it.
Health.
That was it. Yes, how we define health
matters.
Yes,
right? And so a lot of us have a difficult understanding. We often just talk about like the absence of illness,
yes,
the absence of a disorder or something. But in some ways, that's really not enough. Right? We want to flourish. We want to do more. But health is really about that ability to recover well.
Yes.
We see that in physical health. People who are healthy have injuries.
Yep.
They can still get sick.
Yep.
But they recover faster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're thinking about psychologically and emotionally is can we spot something earlier?
Yep.
Can we recover when something does happen? You know, versus, that was such a messy fall.
Yeah.
That I don't.
We just spin out for years.
Years of work, right?
Yeah.
Versus, okay, I can catch this and say, like, maybe I need to adjust and take a little time, but I notice it.
Yep. It's not the absence of something.
It's not.
Yeah, I love that.
But it's our ability to sort of deal with it
quickly.
Recover.
It's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Elizabeth Powell.
Thank you so much. This was fun.